Buffy.
Really? Well, happily, it doesn't concern me what your name is. Don't just stand there like a little clot. Come along.
Her name was Anissa Jones, but she will forever be known as Buffy Davis, the freckle-faced pigtail little girl who charmed millions of Americans during the 1960s on the hit television show Family Affair.
There was nobody in this country that didn't know who Buffy was. You could go into any small town, anywhere, and say Buffy. Oh, that cute girl on television.
But Anissa Jones never lived the charmed life that Buffy enjoyed.
There was something else tugging at her, but she would cover that up and be who she thought she had to be.
Anissa's teen years were spent shuffling between the homes of her divorced parents. She dropped out of high school and began drinking and taking drugs.
She just didn't really have any love or any attention. And what do? You crave that. People need it. And she went out and found it elsewhere.
Anissa's search for stability took her down a destructive path, and in 1976, the former child star was found dead of a lethal drug overdose at the tender age of 18.
And I remarked to my partner that she is so pretty, she just didn't seem like she was gone.
In the next hour, we will look back on the rise and tragic death of one of Hollywood's most adorable and tormented child stars.
There's a part of me that is not there. There's a part of the show that is definitely gone, and that's sad.
Anissa's story will include interviews with family members, friends, and co-stars, and will feature memorable television footage and a large collection of personal photographs.
She had an awfully tough life. She had to be a grown-up kid.
She had no childhood, none. Never had a chance.
And for the first time, Anissa's former boyfriend will publicly recount the horrifying details of her tragic and terrible death.
I ran upstairs and, I knew when I looked at her that she'd pass out. So, we dressed her, basically. We put some clothes on her and we called the paramedics immediately.
Was Anissa Jones' death a suicide? Or did a wild night of partying simply go awry?
People that she was running around with and the things that they were doing, something like that was just bound to happen.
This is the story of the little girl known as Buffy, a beloved child actor whose life ended before she had a chance to grow up. This is the story of Anissa Jones, the true Hollywood story.
The dream of being one from life's ambition was to be the star. Covers the public scandal.
In the 1930s, child actors such as Jackie Cooper, Spanky McFarland, and Shirley Temple dazzled moviegoers. In the 50s, television gave birth to a new generation of young stars. Jerry Mather's portrayal of Beaver on Leave It to Beaver, and Lauren Chapin's role as Kitten on Father Knows Best made these kids household names. But that popularity was eclipsed in 1966 when a tiny 8-year-old girl landed the role of Buffy in a new show called Family Affair. Longtime children's agent Mary Grady knew immediately the show found its magic.
Anissa Jones, to me, was one of the first ones that I saw as another budding Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple, no one could touch. And I think Anissa had all the earmarks, personality, everything.
Mary Anissa Jones was born on March 11, 1958, in the college town of West Lafayette, Indiana. Her parents, John and Paula Jones, married the year before while they were both attending graduate school at Purdue University. In 1959, after the birth of their second child, Paul, the couple moved the family to Los Angeles and they bought a house on the beach. John's mother, Helen, knew her son was excited about settling out west.
He liked California. And he has asthma, and he wanted to live near the ocean, so he was free from that. And that's what they did. They moved to Playa del Rey.
Armed with a PhD in engineering, John went to work for the Hughes Aircraft Company. Paula stayed home to take care of the kids. She was particularly fond of her outgoing daughter. Anissa, as her family called her, started weekly dance lessons at the age of 4. A year later, Paula took the little girl on her first audition. In 1964, 6-year-old Anissa was cast in a commercial for a new breakfast cereal. Paula was elated, But that happiness was tempered by the despair over her crumbling marriage. Later that year, John moved into his own apartment. Months later, in April of 1965, he filed for a divorce.
They had a lot of fun together till the divorce. And those kids didn't know what was going on. They were told lies about their father. Anissa was told that her father was a homosexual. It was a horrible marriage. It was awful for him. He didn't know what to do, and he loved his kids.
Paula was awarded custody of the children and the beachfront property. Financially unable to maintain her homemaker status, she occasionally worked as a real estate agent and high school substitute teacher. But Paula never gave up the dream of making her daughter a star. She aggressively pursued a show business career for Anissa. The persistence paid off in the spring of 1966, when 8-year-old Anissa tried out for her first television role in a newly developed series titled Family Affair. Production supervisor John Stevens watched the audition.
She wasn't an actress coming in, but she was just so cute. And there was just something about her that was just magical.
Anissa was the overwhelming choice for the role of Buffy, the youngest of 3 children who move in with their bachelor uncle after their parents die in a car crash. Veteran actor Brian Keith was cast as the freewheeling Uncle Bill, with Sebastian Cabot as his jovial butler, Mr. French. Kathy Garver was given the part of the teenage sister Sissy, and Johnny Whitaker played Brother Jody, who was several years older than Buffy in the original storyline. The producers made a quick change, however, after taking one look at Buffy and Jody together.
When Anissa Jones and I got in front of the camera, magic was made. And Hollywood decided, this is it. We're going to change it from a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old to 6-year-old twins. And we became the twins.
The kids were the key, along with Brian. And that's, we thought, it would just be a little bit different from that. But they went with the money, and the money was obviously the kids.
With script changes in place and casting complete, Family Affair shot a pilot in May of 1966. Despite a rather sad premise for a half-hour comedy, CBS gave the order for a full season of shows. The sitcom was scheduled to debut that fall. For Anissa Jones, all 43 inches and 43 pounds of her, the role of Buffy was about to put her in the spotlight. But she would never find comfort there. Coming up on the E! True Hollywood Story, the pressures on a child star.
It wore her down very quickly. The schedule was just impossible for her.
And later, domestic survival.
Oh, he had to get custody of her so nobody could take her away.
By the age of 4, pint-sized Anissa Jones was dazzling dance instructors and commercial casting directors. Ironically, her career shifted into high gear in 1966 after her parents split in a bitter divorce. Paula Jones hoped her daughter's charm and talent could translate into financial security for the broken family. Anissa eventually landed a television role that turned the tiny 8-year-old into the most famous child star of her time.
She was aware that she was Buffy, and she could never be Anissa. And I think she would like to have spent a little time out of her life being Anissa, which she never was.
The story of a bachelor uncle thrust into parenthood by the tragic death of his brother and sister-in-law seemed a tough sell to television audiences. Family Affair creators Don Feddersen and Ed Hartman had plenty of doubts about the show's chances when the series premiered on CBS on Monday, September 12, 1966.
You're going to take good care of French while I'm gone, huh?
Mrs. Beasley will take care of French.
Bill, I'll bring the car around.
Jody! Buffy!
Is Mr. William Davis at home?
In a initial fears of failure were short-lived. By the middle of the first season, Family Affair became one of the most popular series on television. Brian Keith was billed as the star, but audiences fell in love with the characters of Buffy and Jody. That didn't bother the usually gruff Keith, according to his former wife, Judith Holden.
Brian had wonderful rapport with the children. He loved working with them. Well, how can you make something else important when you've got two faces like that to look at? The two of them, Johnny and Anissa, they were just wonderful kids.
Writing partners Austin and Irma Kalish were instructed to develop most of their storylines around the twins. The Kalishes were particularly partial to Buffy.
Just as John Fedderson envisioned her as the best little girl in the world, everyone envisioned her the same way, perhaps wishing their own children were like her or thinking they were like her.
Jody, I'm scared. I don't want to be a big ballet star like Miss Denver. Why not?
Buffy's tremendous appeal quickly turned her into the most recognizable little girl in America.
That's what I'm scared of. I like it here with you, Sissy, and Uncle Bill. I don't want to go all over the world. I'm only in the first grade.
Part of the appeal of Family Affair was the show's willingness to tackle sensitive subject matter. In one of the series' most touching episodes, Buffy befriends a classmate who is too ill to attend school. The ailing girl was played by Eve Plum, who would later be known to TV audiences as Jan Brady on The Brady Bunch.
The storyline was that she was dying of leukemia, which I guess was explained to me in some way. The idea being that she was going to die before Christmas, and how sad is that? That's so horrible. So they're going to bring her little presents before Christmas. It's very sad.
But why do you want your Christmas party here? Because you're my friend, and your mom says you won't be able to come to our house. Could we, Mom? Could we have the party here, please?
Yes, darling.
Good. Then we'll pretend like it's December and have a real nice party.
Audiences' love affair with Buffy produced a marketing boon for Family Affair. By its second season in 1967, there were coloring books, paper dolls, and lunchboxes featuring Anissa's character. She even had her own line of clothes. And Buffy's constant companion, Mrs. Beasley, became the best-selling doll in America. Anissa's agent, Arthur Kennard, believed his client was oblivious to the hype.
I don't think Buffy ever really knew how important she was. She was a regular person, young person. I don't think she was even aware of the amount of publicity that was generated when she walked in a room.
By 1967, 9-year-old Anissa Jones had one of the most demanding schedules in Hollywood. She spent weekdays on the set of Family Affair and weekends on the road doing publicity for both the show and her growing line of merchandise. It was an enormous workload for a child. The show's production supervisor, John Stevens, worried about the consequences.
She was happy with the role at first. It was all very glamorous, but then it wore down very quickly. The schedule was just impossible for her.
Stevens expressed his concerns to Anissa's mother, Paula.
The only thing I would ever really say that I would find fault with Paula is that we all said, please, since you have a direct relationship with Don Fedderson, please speak to Don Fedderson and tell him that Anissa needs some time off. She's got to lead a little bit of a normal life. That was never done.
Paula did not take the advice to heart. Anissa was kept busier than ever. The business-like relationship that developed between mother and daughter was noticed by co-stars Johnny Whitaker and Kathy Garver.
She obeyed Paula. She did what she was told. Probably from an authoritarian type of relationship. Paula was very authoritarian.
Whenever Paula spoke, Anissa listened. And that she was very obedient and she did what, Mommy said.
Anissa was making lots of money for both the show and her family. No one in power was willing to alter her workload. Coming up on the E! True Hollywood Story, Anissa's unhappy family affair.
You could see it in her face. I mean, she did not show a loving relationship with her mother.
And later, picking up the pieces of her shattered life.
She'd come to the door with a suitcase and said, not that I want to do this, but I don't have anywhere else to go. Can we move in?
From its debut in the fall of 1966, Family Affair was an instant hit with audiences and critics alike. The sitcom's success spawned lucrative side businesses, including a line of clothes, books, and toys. At the center of the media and marketing frenzy was the show's biggest star, a little girl named Anissa Jones, a tiny 9-year-old, for whom success meant all work and no play.
She really never left the studio almost 52 weeks out of the year, which is just an awful lot to ask of a little child.
Is everybody's favorite from Family Affair, Miss Anissa Jones.
The popularity of Family Affair turned Anissa into a highly sought-after television personality. In 1967, at the age of 9, she became one of the youngest presenters at the Emmy Awards.
Isn't she cute?
Anissa also ventured into the talk show world, serving as co-hostess on The Mike Douglas Show.
I understand that Sebastian teased you when you were here last about being on the show and everything. Did he say anything about that?
Well, no, but he's on the show. He was on the show, wasn't he?
Yes, he did a whole week with me.
So he always tells me, he always says, well, you know, I was on the show, and, you really are going on the show? Whoa.
Is that the way he talks like that?
Well, he has...
Deep voice, yes, he did.
Well, he's a man.
Oh, yes. He had a higher voice, he'd be a girl, wouldn't he? Huh?
No, he would be a man with a high voice.
Even the President of the United States wanted to meet the girl known as Buffy. In November of 1968, Anissa and her television twin, Johnny Whitaker, were invited to the White House by Lyndon B. Johnson. That same year, the Women's Army Corps made Anissa an honorary member.
And should we salute? Okay. Oh, that's wonderful.
The film industry wanted the small screen star as well. In 1969, 11-year-old Anissa made her movie debut as a young dancer alongside Elvis Presley in The Trouble with Girls. Anissa's popularity helped Family Affair hit #1 in the ratings during its 3rd season. For Anissa, all this success meant more demands on her time.
The publicity director, Les Coffin, would come onto our set at 4:30 and asking me when the kids will be finished. And I said, what do you mean? Well, don't you know she's going to St. Louis along with Johnny to open a shoe store? I said, what? Yes, and then she's going to New York to open a department store. Then she's going to stop down in San Diego. I said, all of that in one weekend? And that was it.
The pace never slowed for Anissa, even after she broke her leg in a playground accident in April of 1969. The Family Affair writers simply incorporated the injury into a storyline.
Well, I just hope she didn't tear her jeans.
She didn't tear her jeans, Uncle Bill. She broke her leg.
They needed a show with her having a broken leg. So in one day we wrote a script that they had to take and shoot the next day.
Hey, how is it? Pretty bad?
It's okay.
By the late 1960s, 11-year-old Anissa was outgrowing the young character she portrayed.
Anissa loved Mrs. Beasley for the first year or two, but then she figured, well, she'd go on to something else, but not on Family Affair, not at Don Feddersen. If something worked, it kept working. Why change it? So we never changed it, and to the last day, Mrs. Beasley was there with her.
Anissa was too much of a moneymaker as a little kid, and they didn't want to let her grow up.
Anissa longed for a conventional life. She wanted to attend public school so she could spend more time with friends, but regular school conflicted with her bustling career.
Anissa especially, missing kind of, I think, something during the show years, wanted to be like her friends, wanted desperately to be like everybody else, and wanted to be normal. And she was little, she was like 4'10", which made her even more anxious to, I think, be like everybody else.
Anissa also suffered because of a complicated relationship with her parents. She never saw and rarely spoke of her father, John, in the years after her parents' divorce in 1965.
Talking about her dad was taboo. You know, we didn't discuss her dad. We would talk about other things. And, you know, so I never really knew what the story was. I knew that they were divorced. I knew what divorce was. But that was about it. You didn't talk about John Sr.
Paula was frequently quoted in the press as saying, "We don't talk about Anissa's father, he's out of our lives." But John Jones was living in Southern California and desperately wanted to be part of Anissa's life. His ex-wife's terse comments caused great pain.
I've never met anybody that vicious. I guess I grew up with the wrong kind of people or something, but I've never met anybody that vicious.
Paula's behavior also drove a wedge between her and Anissa.
I felt that there was early hostility, and I never saw it change between the mother and the daughter. Whether it was a jealousy, she was dictatorial, and I thought that Anissa resented it. You could see it in her face. I mean, she did not show a loving relationship with her mother.
Despite mounting frustrations in her personal and professional life, Anissa abided by her mother's orders. Those around Anissa wondered for how much longer. Coming up on the E! True Hollywood Story, Buffy turns her back on show business.
Anissa made a conscious decision after Family Affair to get out of the business.
And later, a shocking discovery.
And they just start screaming like, she's dead, she's dead. I was like, what?
For 5 years, American audiences carried on a love affair with Buffy from the hit sitcom Family Affair. But by the early 1970s, 13-year-old Anissa Jones privately yearned to shed her childlike television persona. She also wanted a bit of normalcy in her dysfunctional personal life. Anissa was about to get her chance.
She had tasted success, but she hadn't tasted life yet.
Good morning, Mr. French. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
I beg your pardon?
5 years ago today, we came here.
So it is.
By the 5th season in 1970, Family Affair slipped out of the top 10. Television viewing taste shifted to more adult-themed comedies such as All in the Family and The Flip Wilson Show. CBS president Fred Silverman wanted to phase out traditional programming, and Family Affair was one of the first casualties. In the summer of 1971, after 138 episodes, the show was unceremoniously canceled.
That's kind of the way that it ended. It was all, upper echelon. It wasn't that any of the actors wanted to quit. It was just going on about politics.
While most of the cast and crew of Family Affair scrambled to find other work, 13-year-old Anissa was thrilled to finally get a break.
Anissa made a conscious decision after Family Affair to get out of the business. She didn't want anything else to do with it.
But Anissa's mother was not as anxious for her daughter to abandon acting. Paula Jones took Anissa to several auditions, including one for the role of Regan, a girl possessed by the devil in The Exorcist. Anissa was thrilled when she didn't get the part. She happily stepped out of the spotlight and into civilian life, enrolling in junior high school in the fall of 1972. Agent Mary Grady knew the tough transition Anissa faced.
It's very difficult for the kids, and especially at that age, teenagers. I mean, they're just becoming young adults, and here they've been away from all the kids in the neighborhood.
Anissa's desire to fit in with her peers meant she did not want to be recognized as Buffy. She expressed her sentiments to classmate Tristan Marquez.
I was definitely intrigued by the Buffy thing. I mean, you can't help that. But people knew her for who she was in the neighborhood and in the school. As for how she felt about Buffy, she liked to kind of keep a low profile about it. It kind of gave me the impression that she kind of wanted it to go away.
Anissa's greatest challenges, however, were not in public, but inside her own home. The up-and-down relationship with her mother grew rockier as an increasingly eccentric Paula spent less and less time attending to her 13-year-old daughter. Friend Lisa Valdez often couldn't believe what she witnessed when she visited Anissa.
The mom would answer the door with no clothes on, or hiding behind a newspaper, or she'd be in her bed yelling, saying, "Anissa, answer the door." And you didn't really see her much. She wasn't a motherly type.
Searching for parental stability, Anissa turned to her father. John Jones had been absent for years, but in the early 1970s, he moved within a few blocks of his daughter's home. John's former fiancée, Elaine Watkins, remembers when Anissa re-entered his life.
She'd come to the door with a suitcase and said, "Not that I want to do this, but I don't have anywhere else to go. Can we move in?" And that she was too upset living at home with friction between her mother and her.
John relished the chance to get reacquainted with Anissa and his son Paul, but John and his mother Helen were startled at the apparent neglect.
She didn't have a stitch of clothes to wear when she came to Johnny. The first thing they had to do was go and buy her a dress.
In December of 1972, John fought to gain custody of 14-year-old Anissa and 13-year-old Paul. The bitter battle that ensued included John's shocking claim that Paula physically and verbally abused Anissa and Paul.
There was too much family friction between her and her mother, and Paul and her mother, and it was sometimes violent, and she wanted to live with her dad.
Paula had a mean disposition. How do you know what she'd do to him or do to her? She could come and take her away. So he had to get custody of her so nobody could take her away.
After ordering psychiatric exams of both parents, a judge awarded custody of the Jones kids to their 44-year-old father, John, in April of 1973. Now in her father's care, Anissa finally seemed to be enjoying the stability she craved, but it would not last. Coming up on the True Hollywood Story, Anissa tries to numb her pain.
She seemed to be getting involved with people that were doing more drugs and different criminal type of activities.
And later, suicide or an accident.
How could anybody allow her to go to that level where an overdose was possible?
13-year-old Anissa Jones was tired of acting when Family Affair, the TV show that made her famous, was unexpectedly canceled in the summer of 1971. But Anissa's childhood dream of leading a normal life was complicated by an unhappy relationship with her mother. The teenager eventually turned to her long-lost father, John. The tranquility did not last, however, leaving Anissa alone and confused.
I noticed the changes where she really was miserable. She was not happy. She started taking drugs.
Anissa and her brother Paul found serenity inside their father's tiny beach apartment. In September of 1973, 15-year-old Anissa started public high school near her home and quickly made friends. John's fiancée, Elaine Watkins, noticed a change in her demeanor.
Anissa would want to hold hands with Paul and her dad and me and my kids and say, "This is just like family, just like family." He used to go, "Oh, cut out that family stuff." We did things together. We had fun.
Anissa's desire for a stable home life took a tragic turn in early 1974 when her father suddenly fell ill.
The kids knew something was wrong. I told them as much as I could. And they'd both been taken to see Johnny in the hospital. But they had doped Johnny up. His heart was just all falling apart.
Not long after entering the hospital, John Paul Jones died of heart disease on March 7, 1974. He was 44. A week later, Anissa marked her 16th birthday by scattering her father's ashes over the ocean.
After he died, it was just like she spiraled downhill from there on. She really did not want to go back home. It was the last thing she wanted to do, and I think it really was hard on her.
Following their father's unexpected death, Paul returned to live with his mother, while Anissa moved in with Elaine. Paula was incensed that her daughter would not come home, so she called the police and reported Anissa as a runaway. 16-year-old Anissa was arrested and taken to juvenile hall, where she was locked up for several months.
It was kind of sad, and I brought her books that she could read. Didn't know what to take her. And she told me the horrible things that happened at juvenile hall.
When she was released from juvenile hall in the summer of 1974, Anissa went to stay with her grandmother in Orange County, California, south of Los Angeles. But Anissa missed her friends and the beach, and that fall she reluctantly moved back in with her mother. The family reunion did not go well. Anissa responded by adopting a rebellious lifestyle. Tristan Marquez was a frequent partner in crime.
We used to do shoplifting in the area sometimes. We used to steal clothes out of clothes dryers. Oh, we used to get in all kinds of little trouble here and there down at the beach.
As a young star, Anissa made thousands of dollars a week on Family Affair. By the time she was 16, however, most of that money had been spent, and Anissa rarely had a dollar in her pocket. To make ends meet, the former child icon took a job at a local donut shop. It was during this period in 1975 that Anissa became a fixture on the local Southern California party scene. Alan Coven was a regular cohort.
I knew all kinds of people, but the people I hung around with were into drugs and alcohol, and so was I. So was Anissa.
Anissa did more than drink beer and smoke marijuana. She often got high on such potent drugs as Quaaludes, angel dust, cocaine, and downers. The destructive lifestyle worried childhood friend Lisa Valdez.
I think it started light and then it just went into heavy stuff. And I think it was people influencing her and wrong people.
Anissa's schoolwork suffered. By her senior year of high school in 1975, she was more than a year behind in credits and transferred to a school for troubled students.
She didn't want to be in a structured classroom. I think her whole life was kind of like that, in turmoil.
She never spoke about college or future plans, but one thing Anissa did look forward to was her 18th birthday. On that day, she would receive a $70,000 trust fund from her Family Affair earnings. Anissa marked the occasion with a big party at her mother's house, and shortly thereafter, she bought a car and moved into an apartment with her brother Paul.
She got that money, man. They were out. And that's where the trouble really started.
Coming up on the E! True Hollywood Story, a party turns tragic.
A bunch of kids were doing a bunch of drugs, and somebody died.
It's a tragic end to something that shouldn't have happened, and really, there's no reason why she had to die.
During her turbulent teenage years, Anissa Jones ended a successful acting career, said a final goodbye to her father, and struggled to cope with a difficult mother. As an 18-year-old adult with a trust fund, Anissa finally had a chance to achieve some security and independence. But her indulgence in partying and drugs was about to cost her everything.
The people that she was running around with and the things that they were doing, I mean, something like that was just bound to happen.
In the mid-1970s, sex, drugs, and rock and roll were a strong influence on the American culture. 18-year-old Anissa got caught up in the scene. Her experimentation with drugs intensified when she and her brother, Paul, both still in high school, rented their own apartment in the spring of 1976.
She had all kinds of real bad people in and out of that place and partying, and it was just not a good thing for her.
After she failed to graduate high school that May, Anissa spent the summer partying, using the money from her trust fund. Anissa frequently visited the small coastal town of Oceanside, where she liked to hang out and get high with friends. Her group included new boyfriend Alan Coven.
Everybody in our circle of friends was very sick at that time. I'll tell you that. We were very, very engulfed in alcohol and drugs.
Their wild times escalated one weekend late that summer. On the evening of Saturday, August 27th, 1976, Anissa and Alan planned to meet a small group of people at friend Helen Hennessy's house in Oceanside. Before leaving for Helen's house, they took Quaaludes, smoked angel dust, and snorted cocaine.
And when we got to the house, we snorted the rest of the coke, and everybody was kind of ampy, on the coke. And the suggestion came up that Anissa had some Reds, so let's take some Reds. Everybody took 5 Reds.
Moments after taking the Reds, otherwise known as Downers, Anissa and Alan retired to the master bedroom.
At about 3 o'clock in the morning, Buffy got up and went into Helen Hennessy's bedroom and tried to talk to her, and after a few minutes staggered back to her bedroom, and that was the last anybody saw of her alive.
The next morning, Alan got out of bed without noticing anything wrong with Anissa. He went to breakfast with a friend.
When we came back about an hour later, the girl, Helen and Carla and Belinda were out front, and they went up to the bedroom, I guess. Well, they were out front, and they just started screaming like, she's dead, she's dead. I was like, what? And I ran upstairs, and I knew when I looked at her that she had passed out. So, we dressed her, basically. We put some clothes on her, and we called the paramedics immediately.
Paramedics tried to revive Anissa, but it was too late. She was declared dead on the afternoon of August 28th. She was only 18. Police Detective John Wagner investigated the scene.
We determined that her death was accidental after interviewing all of her friends, trying to determine her state of mind, learning about her background and what she had been doing prior to all of this.
Did she kill herself? Yeah, you bet. She killed herself. She killed herself. Was it suicide? No. It wasn't suicide.
The coroner called Anissa's death the most massive drug overdose he had seen. Family and friends were devastated.
Oh boy. I put the phone down in Wisconsin, and I couldn't believe it. My Buffy was dead. It's tough to accept. Long-distance phone call. How could she do this? To me.
I was numb, really. I couldn't believe it. Because I'd seen Anissa 2 weeks before, and we had a good time.
I don't think I was totally shocked. It wasn't like that kind of reaction. It was just a heartfelt, oh, my dear, my sweet little precious, that type of thing. That, not a shock kind of thing.
Detective Wagner had to break the tragic news to Anissa's mother, Paula.
She was in a state of shock. It was hard for her to accept it. Especially, it was hard for her to accept the fact that she had died of a drug overdose because, according to Paula, she was not aware of any drug use.
Paula requested that Anissa be cremated. There was no funeral. Anissa's ashes were scattered over the ocean near her home in Playa del Rey.
It's a tragic end to something that shouldn't have happened, and really, there's no reason why she had to die, It's just, I wish someone could have intervened maybe and gone to help her, or let her out of there, or anything, so she could be here today.
Coming up on the True Hollywood Story, remembering the girl forever known as Buffy.
I'm concerned, and I'm here worrying about what's going on, and she's where it's peaceful and loving and everything is great.
I think of her a lot, and I think, oh God, I wonder what she'd be like, now.
Buffy Davis was one of the most adored characters of the 1960s and early 70s, but actress Anissa Jones had little in common with her television alter ego. A turbulent childhood was followed by troubled teenage years, and in 1976, at the age of 18, she died of a drug overdose.
God, a child that special, that well-known, that popular, that famous, how could anybody allow her to go to that level where an overdose was possible? It always will be a mystery.
Anissa's death was ruled an accident, But the exorbitant amount of drugs in her system prompted some to question Anissa's state of mind before she died.
I think she was just frustrated because she knew all about drugs and she thought they were terrible. She talked to me about women who were on drugs. Some of her friends, their mothers were on drugs. She thought they were a horrible thing. And I think she did it because she didn't know which way to turn.
Friends are still coping with Anissa's tragic and untimely death.
I think of her a lot, and I think, oh God, I wonder what she'd be like, now. If she would have had kids and what they would have been like and what she would have been and who she would have been. But there's a lot, I do miss her.
To this day, every now and again I'll think about Anissa, or I'll drive by her house and point it out to my friends. That's where Anissa used to live, and look, that's where we put our names in the cement and stuff. So, I have a lot of feelings for Anissa.
In 1984, 8 years after Anissa's passing, Paula Jones lost her only other child, Paul, also to a tragic overdose. He was 24. Today, Paula lives in the same beach house in Playa del Rey where she raised her children. She declined to be interviewed for this program. Family Affair lives on through syndication, allowing new generations to fall in love with the show's memorable cast of characters. Fans have also mourned the loss of Sebastian Cabot, who died of a stroke in 1977, and Brian Keith, who committed suicide in 1997 while battling terminal cancer. Anissa's death has been particularly painful for her surviving co-stars.
Whether or not it was a decision that she made, or whether it was just a culmination of where she was and what she was doing, that was Anissa.
Well, there's a picture that I'll show you that is very interesting, and it's my favorite picture of the two of us. She's got a big smile on her face, but I'm very serious, which is kind of different because it usually was the opposite, which is kind of how I feel. I'm concerned and I'm here worrying about what's going on, and she's where it's peaceful and loving and everything is great.
Good night, Uncle Bill.
Good night, Buffy.